Good afternoon. My name is Joel Hunt, and I'm the Program Administrator for ODOT's Highway Beautification and Pollinator Habitat Program. And with me today is Mike Retterer, and he's the State Coordinator for the Ohio Pollinator Habitat Initiative. So the Ohio Department of Transportation exists to provide easy movement of people and goods from place to place. And while most people associate ODOT or any Department of Transportation with mega projects like interstate widenings and flyover ramps, 97 cents of every dollar that we spend goes to preserving what we already have. In Ohio, we have the 4th largest interstate system in the country, the 2nd largest inventory of bridges, and the 6th highest volume of traffic. We manage 19,000 miles of roadsides, and because of our central location, we're within a day's drive of 60% of the US and Canadian population. So the Ohio Department of Transportation's main priority is from the center line out. And so with us focusing on pavement bridges and drainage and all these other things, unfortunately, roadside vegetation management falls to the bottom of the list. So why do we spend our time and our money establishing pollinator habitats? It actually saves us time and money. So we estimate about $400 per acre to establish pollinator habitat. And once it's established, we can essentially walk away from that piece of land. And by spending less time on roadsides, we can fix more potholes and replace more culverts. And it also gives us regulatory assurance. It allows us to be good stewards of the environment and contribute to Ohio's economy. Agriculture is Ohio's largest industry, worth $2 billion per year. And it also allows us the opportunity to work with communities as well as conservation groups and volunteers. But the real reason that we got involved so heavily with pollinator habitats at ODOT is the potential listing of the monarch butterfly as an endangered species. So we have been involved with the development of the Candidate Conservation Agreement with Assurances since 2018. And we are now fully enrolled in the CCAA. And in doing so, we agree to conserve 8% of our total enrolled acres. So that's 20,800 acres for the next 50 years. And we agree to do 4 things. That's reduce mowing, use targeted herbicide applications to control noxious and invasive weeds and woodies, establish new high-value roadside pollinator habitats when resources are available, and also to perform monarch and milkweed and blooming nectar plant monitoring. So we actually implemented these conservation measures before we were fully enrolled in the CCAA. And in doing so, we created 80,000 acres of potential suitable habitat just by pulling our mowers back. And that saves taxpayers $1.8 million every year. And we also developed 1,200 acres of high-value pollinator habitat since 2017. So when you're thinking about highway right-of-way, it really consists of 4 zones. So the first zone, obviously, is the road surface. The second zone is from the edge of pavement to the ditch. So the median and that zone 2, we will continue to mow to maintain line of sight. Where our efforts are focused are on the back slopes, or zone 3 and 4. Going forward, ODOT has pledged that we will naturalize zones 3 and 4 by using integrated roadside vegetation management practices. So as I said, we enrolled all 260,000 acres under our purview into the CCAA, and we're required to adopt conservation measures on 8% of those acres, or 20,800. And as I said, that begins from the edge of pavement and goes 30 feet, or essentially to the ditch line. Now, we did exempt urban areas, keeping in mind car dealerships and other businesses that want that nice view shed. So we exempted those urban areas from the enrolled acres. So as I said, the first commitment that we've made in the CCAA is to reduce mowing. And thinking about why we mow in the first place, it's to maintain the clear zone along the shoulder, reduces the potential for wildfire, it controls woody vegetation that could eventually grow up and become unstable and fall into the roadway. And it also buys us time until the fall when we can apply herbicides effectively. What's been really the challenge within ODOT is educating the workforce on mowing at the wrong time. We all know that mowing at the wrong time can directly kill pollinators. It can impact their food and shelter resources, and then it can also spread noxious weed seeds when we don't properly clean our mowing equipment. So fortunately, Interstate 70 divides our state in half, and so when we've rolled out these new mowing guidelines and these mowing restrictions, we were able to divide it by north of Interstate 70 and south. I'm not going to read through each of the mowing windows. What I do want to point out, though, is kind of turning this on its head when we were talking with our county managers that during the winter, in between storms, when the ground is frozen, you can get your mower out there. I mean, our mowers have cabs that are heated, and so that really gives them the opportunity to mow 7 months north of Interstate 70 and 5.5 months south. So it's actually been an opportunity for them to open up that springtime when they used to focus on mowing so heavily and do other work post-winter. So targeted herbicide applications was the second commitment we've made in the CCAA. And the first thing any herbicide applicator will tell you is that you need to know your target species before you start applying herbicides, right? And so Mike Retterer did an awesome job putting together an in-field weed identification class. It was well attended, you can see from this photo. Unfortunately, it was shut down due to COVID, but we are resuming those classes in the spring. So allowing us to have our staff be in the field, with backpack sprayers and doing their targeted herbicide, we want them to know, first of all, what's the noxious weeds, because we're required by law to handle those. Invasive weeds, what are like the top 5 to 10 that we see most common? And those do vary around the state, just on geographic location. So in my class, he designed that specific to the region. And also, I mean, just by using targeted herbicides, it gives you the opportunity to save money because you're using less material and you're using it at the right time to get the right kill. So when you're thinking about establishing a roadside pollinator habitat, I mean, these are just years 1, 2, and 3 on what to expect. And unlike some of the other presenters whose, soils may be different than roadsides. When you think about building roads, you want to have compacted clay soil, something that can withstand all the weight of the vehicles. And we borrowed dirt, from all over to build our roadways. And so you're not going to have the best. So we're very careful in where we select our sites. But essentially the process is simple. In the fall, we do a total kill with glyphosate. In the spring, we'll follow up with another herbicide treatment and then use a drill seed and drill our annual wildflowers as well as the perennial native grasses. Now, I've highlighted in red 2 things that's been very important. It's been a hard lesson for us, is that you have to mow high, 10 to 12 inches or so, the first week of July and the first week of August. Now that may just be specific to Ohio, but if you miss those mid-season mowings during establishment in year 1 and 2, you're going to lose the sites to annual grasses. So within our pollinator mix, we have about 24 forb and legume species and 4 species of grasses, and we cover all 3 bloom periods of at least 3 species per bloom period. Since 2017, when we really got active with our pollinator habitat program. We built on the success from 2011 when we did our first site, and now we have 120 locations with over 400 fields comprising 2 square miles of new habitat. And we use those highway interchanges, roadsides, some of our facilities like rest areas, both retired and new. We also have demonstration gardens at some of our rest areas. And as resources are available, we plan to add additional high-value pollinator habitats. This is an example of what we would select. I know Mike wanted to expand a little bit on this in-field project here.
In-field projects, this makes sense for pollinator habitat. They're large open spaces. They do not restrict line of sight or have erosion or any kind of environmental issues. So they are ideally to establish pollinator habitat, and additionally saves time and money to ODOT and their workers, and are aesthetically pleasing for the traffic that passes by.
So we have quite a few remnant sites that were planted earlier on in the 1990s when we planted wildflowers for aesthetics. And by using selective herbicides, we were able to remove the, of course, the noxious and invasive weeds and also those cool season grasses. So it's not a total restoration. There's plenty of this out there that with very little money, time, and effort, you're able to turn into a healthy habitat. I'm going to give you some examples here of some projects that we've done around the state. In southern Ohio, you can see on the left year 1 after we did a total kill. To the right is year 2. National Wild Cherokee Federation approached us and said they wanted to use 3 acres of land at one of our garage sites, and they provided the labor, equipment, and materials. And you can see on the right, that's year 2. This is one of our demonstration gardens at a rest area. This is inbound from Indiana. And finally, these rest area parks, they're not what they used to be. People don't picnic as much now, so they're just basically exercise areas for pets. And so it's a maintenance headache for us, and it's also just a great spot for us to convert to pollinator habitat. So we've done that in a few of our locations. And we have this small equipment that we've purchased to do smaller projects. But we've really kind of shifted from doing projects in-house and focus more on contracting. So our 4th commitment, our final commitment, is milkweed, monarch, and blooming plant monitoring. This was born really from the integrated monarch monitoring protocol that we tried out. There's just so many different competing work that needs to be done by our environmental coordinators out in the field. So we shifted and did a memorandum of agreement with ODNR, and they're performing that for us, 50 locations, 50 by 150 foot transects, and they do it either in the fall or the springtime. Okay, so I've given you examples of what we've been doing as far as our pollinator efforts, but I want to talk about the future just briefly of ODOT's pollinator habitat program. So in late 2017, we launched a research project with Davey Resource Group to look at our current and our post-construction ground cover seed mixes that meet EPA coverage requirements, provide stormwater benefits, and benefit pollinators. As you can see in this picture, ODOT turns a lot of dirt. We do 1,000 projects a year, and so we want to be able to just direct feed those post-construction projects. So Davey Resource, after doing a literature search, looked at seed mixes that's currently available through ODOT, as well as Pheasants Forever's seed mix and a seed mix that they designed. And so after pulling all this together based on whether it's an infield or a no-mow slope or a wet ditch, all kinds of different scenarios, they put all this into a matrix for us. So We're currently in the field trials, year 2, and so Davey is out doing monitoring for vegetation coverage and height, as well as diversity within those habitat areas. The end goal is for us to update our specification manual, which was the seed specs were developed back in the 1960s, so they're definitely due for an update. One issue that we've run into is whether the general contractor who builds the roads will do the work, or if it's going to be a green contractor. And so, while these things may look good on paper and in practice in certain areas, you're always going to have, threats to successful implementation. And of course, noxious and invasive weeds and woodies, as I mentioned before with mowing, this first week of July and August in the first 2 years. Policy changes, every 4 years we may have a new governor, new administration, and COVID, for example, took a lot of our resources, and so you have to be flexible. But probably, as I mentioned, the biggest threat to success of this research project is whether or not there are enough green contractors who would be willing to step in after a road is built and directly seed and get that site established. With that, I'm going to conclude. My contact information is on the screen, and look forward to hearing any questions you may have. Thanks for your attention.